Hi friends, Taylor from Doomed to Fail. Today's re-release is episode 24, part 2, the Moors murders. So these murders happened over in the UK in the 1960s, and it's a terrible story, as all these true crime stories are. Ian, Brady, and Myra Hindley just drove around and picked folks up to murder and abuse, and it is a classic true crime story now these days and a terrible story for a weekend. So if you want to revisit this with us, please do. We only have four more episodes to re-release for you, so more episodes coming soon, and then we'll be in our regular two times a week schedule. So thank you for listening. Please tell your friends. If you have any questions or ideas, let us know. We're at doomtofailpod@gmail.com.
In the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA096.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Record this computer. Recording is in progress. And we're alive.
Woohoo!
So, yeah, okay, let's get started. Welcome to... I don't need to clap. Welcome to Doomed to Fail, the Red Flaggy podcast where we explore a historic and true crime story about red flags that were being ignored. I'm Forrest, joined here by Taylor. Hi, Taylor.
Hi. We don't have to super rush. I'm fine.
So, what are you doing after this? You're doing a recital?
No, I'm going to Palm Springs for a drag queen bingo with Girl Scouts, but it doesn't start until 1, and we're totally fine. So I don't have to leave for 2 hours. So it was fine.
If Fox News heard you were doing that, you'd be the most famous woman in history of America.
I love the Girl Scouts. The Girl Scouts are very progressive. They have God in their pledge, but they're you don't have to say it. It's no big deal. They are so super cool with it. The Boy Scouts are you can be any religion as long as you're a religion. And you're like, what?
That's not good. It's really
the Girl
gross,
Scouts
actually.
are the best. It's real gross, yeah.
Do we want to share the amazing news that happened this week with our listeners?
What happened?
Pat Robertson died.
Oh God, I know.
How fucking awesome. The world literally got a little bit brighter, just a little bit better.
God,
this
what
week.
A fucking asshole. I know. I said this on my Instagram, but for me, it's just such a bummer that I feel like when you die, it's just lights out and there's no realization. But I wish there was but also did he really believe that shit? I don't know. What piece of shit. He just wanted to steal money from people.
Hold on, I'm looking up my favorite Pat Robertson quotes about feminists, abortionists, and gays.
That we did 9/11?
The gays are the ones that did 9/11. That's what it was.
Oh,
yeah,
9/11.
Yeah,
it was so gay. What a gay day.
Yeah. God, what
a
scumbag.
God,
because the influence, it's not okay, one person having that much of an outsized influence on so much of the shitty things about our society is because people listen to him.
I know. I know.
He goes, okay, so here's what he said. He goes, this is Pat Robertson's quote. I really believe that the pagans and the abortionists and the feminists and the gays and the lesbians who are actively trying to make that an alternative lifestyle, the ACLU, People for the American Way, all of them who have tried to secularize America, I point the finger in their face and say, you helped this happen. He's talking about 9/11.
The ACLU? I mean, I do feel like the ACLU wastes money because I donated $20 10 years ago and they send me a letter every single day. So I'm there's no way that the amount of mail you've sent me costs less than $20. But, and then you have people all the Republicans out there or whatever being we don't want any diversity. We don't want any other lifestyles besides our own, which sucks. Ugh.
Do you know what David Churchill does that I think is really funny? Is he will donate $1 to Republican candidates and then have them spend all their money mailing him letters asking for more money, which is kind of funny.
Do you remember when all those K-pop fans bought all the tickets to Donald Trump's event?
Yes.
They were free tickets, but they reserved all of them. So they thought that thousands of people were coming, and not thousands of people were coming.
So good.
Glad Pat Robinson is dead.
Yes. Yeah. The world is a much better place. Cool. Let's go ahead and dive right in. So who goes first today?
I believe you do.
I do. Okay.
And okay, so I forgot to think about what my drink was going to be, but I think I have one.
Do you want
So
to give me
I'll
yours
go.
first?
Yeah. My drink is like old milk. Like imagine that it's hot and the milk has not been in the fridge for a while.
Kind of sounds good.
Ew, no, it doesn't. It's gonna make you sick.
Mix it with some sugar. Yeah. Beat the
Ew.
curds up with some sugar.
Oh my God, I'm gonna throw up. No.
Okay. I am going with a beer that I never find, but I was in love with when I was living in Florida. Boddington's.
Hmm.
It is a Manchester beer.
You said that before.
Wait, did I do? Oh my God, I've done Manchester before, haven't I?
Yes, because you know why I know that? I have at one point I was like, oh, I'm gonna write down a list of what the drinks are, and I only wrote down one thing, and the one thing I wrote down was Boddington's. I think I even have it written down here. Yeah, January 21st, Boddington's Brewery in Manchester.
Taylor is holding up her diary to show me this. That's incredible, Taylor.
I'm gonna write today's date as well.
Just write ×2 and then put today's date.
I have this whole page for times that you mentioned Boddington's. So row
I
two.
love Boddington's. It's so good. And it's so hard to find. I don't know why it's so hard to find, but
They are
it's
so hard to find.
it's delicious. So I picked Boddington's because my story, I guess, like the last one, is based in the UK. It's based in Manchester. So God, it's weird. I totally forgot I did that other story that was in Manchester. Yeah. Memory's a thick
Can
old
you do the
thing.
whole thing in a Manchester accent?
I don't know what a Manchester accent is.
I don't either. I feel like I want to go a little bit Boston, be like Manchester, but that's not right,
Boston,
obviously.
yeah, yeah. The problem is that if you
Specific
don't
Boston.
nail it, you just sound stupid. That's the
Okay.
issue. So I'm actually gonna go a bit historic with this one. So I'm gonna do a really, really old timey one. It's a super, super famous one. It's a super famous crime that happened about 60 years ago in Manchester. Uh, Despite how famous it is, I really didn't know much about it. I don't know how much you know about it, but I'm going to be discussing the Moore murders with Ian
Ooh,
Brady
okay.
and Myra Hindley. Are you aware of these guys?
A little bit. I feel like I know weird stuff about Myra Hindley later in life. Is she still alive?
No, no, no. She died a long time ago, in like 2005 or something.
Okay. I know a little bit. Tell me more.
Yeah, so you probably know because I know we have the exact same podcast diet. So like you probably also listened to the Fred and Rose West episode
Hmm.
on last podcast, and Rose West ended up in like a sexual relationship at one point with Myra because
That's the thing.
they were the two most notorious women in UK history. And
And
so that's
Myra's
why
like blonde, right? Or like she was.
I'm
And
gonna get
Rose
into
is.
that. I'm gonna
Okay.
get into that.
Yes, that's the thing that happened later in life that I remembered. Okay.
Exactly,
Yes.
exactly. So she was not blonde naturally, but every photo you find of her, she is blonde. But I'll explain why that was here in a
No one
moment.
really is. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'll explain why that is. I'm gonna mute my phone so people can not hear that, and I'll continue on. So we're gonna start with our main antagonist of the story. Wait, yeah, antagonist. Antagonist is bad, right? Protagonist is good. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
They're antagonists. They're not good people. So
Correct.
okay, Taylor. Per usual, I'm going to go ahead and just say that we are probably going to disagree on a lot of things here. I am going to err on the side that I thought Myra was a complete and absolute monster, and
Mhm.
society seems to think that like she was just some poor put upon girl, and Ian kind of ruined her. And it's like it's a crazy, crazy whatever. You tell me what you think about it when we get to it. But
Okay.
we're going to start with our story with Ian Brady. So Ian was born in Glasgow, Scotland in 1938. He was raised by his mother and pretty much didn't know who his father was at all. He was a pretty precocious child, and he was considered above average intelligence. So he was accepted into a gifted school that was called Shawlands Academy.
Mhm.
He would do these like stupid petty crimes like stealing things here and there, and ultimately at 15 years old he ended up leaving and starting to work in various odd jobs. I guess like back then, I mean, yeah, it makes sense, right? Like 9-year-olds were chimney sweeps, so I guess you're at 15, you just retire out of school and just start working. I mean, that's what you do in old timey England, I guess.
Yeah, there's like either you go to like university if you're rich. Other than that, you just like get a job in the coal mine. I don't
I
know
would
if
have
they have coal
been
there. Soot mine.
I would have been a great chimney sweep, I think. That would have been so fun with a pageboy hat. I'd wear a vest. And I had the pocket watch already, so I could wear the pocket watch and the vest and a pageboy hat and do like a little chimney thing.
Well, that's definitely something you would have had to do when you were a child because you're way too big now to do that.
You think I'm too big?
Yes. I don't know. I've never been in a chimney, but I feel like you're very broad. You're broader than a chimney. But also, I have no idea.
Sweet. I think that's sweet. Thank you.
You're welcome. You
So,
no longer have the body of a 9-year-old boy, so I think
fuck,
that
damn it. These opportunities are ruined for me. So ultimately, at some point, Ian would end up moving back in with his mom. And at that point, she will have left Glasgow for Manchester, England, and picked up a new life there. Again, he would just keep doing these stupid petty crimes and keep getting locked up over and over again.
Mhm.
At around 19 years old, he's released from jail. He was apparently there for a couple of years. Apparently, he had bad treatment in jail. Like he got the shit kicked out of him in jail. I mean, he's a strange little kid, right? And he decided when he got released from jail that okay, that's it. I'm gonna button up. I'm gonna go on the straight and narrow. I'm gonna figure my life out. This is going to jail and do these petty crimes. That is not the route for me. And so
Yeah,
he
he's obviously
started.
bad at it if he keeps going to jail.
I don't know. If I committed crimes when I was 15, I'd probably go to jail too. I bet I can get away with a lot of crimes now. Like, what should I do? Should I embezzle something? Want to bet? Want to bet that I can embezzle $1 million?
Yes. Remember when I put that post-it on your desk that said to do, plan murders, commit murders?
I do remember that. I think I have a picture of that somewhere. Okay, so we'll hold on the embezzlement of the murder part.
Okay.
So he taught himself how to do what's called they call it bookkeeping, which I think just means accounting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he self-taught himself bookkeeping. He would study at the library and do all this. Again, he was a really precocious kid. He would read a lot and all that stuff. And ultimately, he ended up getting this job at some random chemical company doing their accounting work. He would be really into Nazi stuff. So, you know, it's funny because
Wait, is post-Nazi? This is post-World War II, right?
this is right after World War II.
Okay. They just lost, but he's still into
Yeah.
it.
Well, okay, so at this point when I was researching this, I was like, okay, yeah, obviously, like World War II ended like 5, 6, 7 years ago, and you're in England who was just carpet bombed by
Yeah.
Nazis. So you probably have some fascination with who were these people? What was this all about? Like I understood it at this point more of like he's a historical dude who wants to know what happened, not like he likes Nazis.
Okay.
Later on, going back to the blonde hair thing with Myra, my opinion
ew.
changed.
Gross,
Yeah.
gross.
Yeah.
Continue.
So there was one other thing that I couldn't verify because multiple sources said different things about this. Multiple sources would say either he did or he didn't torture and kill a ton of cats and dogs this time when he was a kid. I'm leaning towards no. And I'm actually basing that off of what Ian himself said, because later on we'll find out that he was pretty vocal about everything else. It was kind of like when Jeffrey Dahmer was caught, and they were like, "Did you do this one?" He's like, "No, I mean, I told you everything. I would have told you if I did that one." It's like, why would I lie to you?
I have no more secrets.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. So like in this case, Ian's the one who's like, "No, I like loved animals. Like I never would have hurt an animal." And everybody else is like, "No, he was a serial killer who like killed all these dogs and did all this." It's like you probably didn't. You probably just made that up because you're like, we have to have some pattern here. Yeah, I don't know. That's my take on
or
it.
maybe he like killed a dog, but in like an old-timey way. You know, like you didn't like take your dog to the vet to be put down.
Yeah, you just hit it with a rock until it died. You know what's funny is Luna's sleeping right there.
Luna, we're not going to kill you.
We're not killing Luna. So okay, tell me if I'm wrong about this. So Joe. Our friend Joe Conti is here visiting, staying with me in Austin. It's incredible. Known each other, like at this point, this configuration, people have known each other for like 10, 11 years.
Weird.
And Joe shows up and he's like, I'm going to take him out. We're going to go out in East Austin. If you're in Austin, we're going to go to Kitty Cohen, if you're familiar with that, and then La Holly. And Joe is like, my only request is don't bring your dog. You shouldn't bring your dog. We're going out. We're going to have a good time. Don't bring your dog. And I was like, there's no chance I'm not bringing my dog. Like, why on earth would I go out and not bring my? It makes everything in Austin's outside. Everybody brings their dogs. Like, why would I not? And like, it just blew his mind that I would bring my dog. And it's like, no, of course I'm gonna. Like, and I did, and it was a great time. And she socialized, and she had a great time. It was really fun. But I do think that now we infantilize dogs in a way that they probably didn't when Ian was growing up in England. And so he probably did just bash a dog's head in with a baseball bat. So
Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. Like it's different.
it's different.
Yeah.
It's definitely different.
Hmm.
That was the most long-winded way of just circling back to he just cracked a dog's skull open at some point. So we are going on to, so that's our wrap up of Ian Brady. Just generally speaking, smart, precocious, might be crazy, might not. Don't know.
Sometimes a fuck up. Yeah.
Yeah. Myra is our second person in this equation, and she was actually born in Manchester, or just outside of a little town in 1942. So that would make her 4 years younger than Ian. It sounds like her childhood was mostly just punctuated with abuse and general poverty.
Hmm.
Her dad sounds like he was like a military bro and kind of expected Myra to be super, super tough and just like aggro and all that.
Hmm.
You know, it's interesting because like psychologists after the fact would say that the way her dad treated her or told her how to treat others made her desensitized to violence and emotionally distant and this stuff. But like really all it was like, hey, if someone hits you, you hit them back twice as hard. Like it was one of those, like that's what it actually read like. It wasn't like anytime you're upset, react to it aggressively with violence. Like that's not what
Right.
it was. It was just, don't be stepping whatever. What's the word?
Well,
Step stool?
Doormat.
Doormat, thank you.
I feel like, have you seen the stuff that Arnold Schwarzenegger has been saying lately about his dad?
No.
Because he's pretty much like, my dad was like a Nazi because it was that time, and he came home and he was a terrible, terrible, broken person, and he like beat the shit out of us and was an alcoholic because of the trauma that he went through. And so, he was like, he's like his caution to America is like, stop being assholes because you're going to ruin generations of people, with this like anger and this hate, like no matter what happens, like in the worst case, which is like World War II and concentration camps and all of those things, or like best case, like you have these like lives that are just like horrible and like abusive and everyone's angry. So even on like the English side where they won, like the trauma that those dads went through, and then they had to like come home, and like even on our side too, like my great grandma had three brothers who went to World War II, came home, never did anything else. They were PTSD till the end of their lives. They lived in her mom's attic. They called them the Three Kings. They just hung out in the attic because what they saw was so awful. They couldn't do anything else.
That's wild.
You know?
So
So
one thing
imagine
that
coming home.
from that, like one thing that I've learned a lot of recently is ketamine treatment. So apparently in Austin, there's a lot of these ketamine clinics that apparently are really, really good for working through. Does your shirt say Future Corpse?
It does.
So
That's my future.
ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. Anyway, also your story there just reminded me of that one scene in oh God, Schindler's List where they're burning the piles of body at Auschwitz, and that one Nazi soldier takes his hat off and just starts screaming into the sky because like I don't know, it feels like as a human you know when everything's wrong, even if you're a Nazi.
Yeah, I mean, so many of them had to be. I mean, they're all bad, 100%. But some they were on so much meth and so many drugs and so drunk and all these things to be able to do those inhuman things.
Yeah, well,
You know?
well, shit. Sorry. Okay, going back to Future Corpse. That's an awesome shirt. We should make like it, I'm gonna figure out where you bought that and buy that shirt.
It's from a woman. Her Instagram is The Good Death. She writes. She's a former mortician, and she has a YouTube channel called Ask a Mortician. And she wrote a great book called When Smoke Gets in Your Eyes, and it's about death and what happens to bodies. And it made me feel fine. Made me feel much better about death.
It's Caitlin Doty at The
Yeah.
Good Death. So holler at Caitlin and get some shirts because that is awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, back to Myra. Okay, overall, that's basically her childhood. Poverty, dad is kind of an abusive asshole, but also he wants her to stick up for herself. She develops like a knack for being kind of like a tough girl, but that's mostly it. She was mostly normal. Like everybody who knew her thought that she was well liked and cool, and like, there was nothing wrong with her basically at this point. So, and that's the part of it that annoys me later on when people are like it was all Ian that did it. It's like, dude, like I don't know how many girls I've been with, but none of them could ever have convinced me to like kill somebody. Like nobody's that charming, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So at 18 years old, So, or when Myra's 18 years old, she finally meets Ian for the first time at that chemical company that Ian was a bookkeeper for. Ian would have been like 22 to 23, give or take, at this time.
Hmm.
He would eventually ask her out on a date, and they would start going out together. It was weird. Like the Wikipedia article on this said that like they would just go to X-rated movies and then go back to his apartment. Like it was like, what? Like that was your date?
Ew.
Like it was
I
so
mean,
gross.
that's a weird first date.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like,
Like later, if you're like, this is our jam, then do whatever you want. But if it's your first date, I feel like you should go out for ice cream. But I don't know.
I feel like it needs to be like 3 years in a dating when it's like, let's just start casually every Friday going to an X-rated theater. Like it's like what? But it sounded like this was almost like close to the very beginning. It's like they would just go to these movies together,
All right.
and this is where the Nazi thing comes back into effect because Ian would constantly talk to Myra about Nazis, and like that's where like it flipped for me, which is like this is probably more January 6th than just interest in
Yeah.
history type of a thing. And then, like you mentioned earlier, so the very first photo, if you look up, if you Google Myra Hindley, the
Yeah,
very
I'm doing it
first
now.
photo of her is blonde hair, like crimson deep red lipstick is what shows up. It's
Mhm.
gonna be black and white. You don't know it, but it's gonna be crimson red.
Yeah.
And dude, she was a brunette. Like she wasn't born that way. Like she did this for Ian because I guess like nothing specifically said it, but he had this like obsession with like the Aryan concept. And I guess Myra really liked him a lot and wanted him to be impressed with her, and so she wanted to look more traditionally Aryan, and so she did this to herself. So
Hmm.
such is life. Yeah. One statement that Myra would later say when she was after she'd been incarcerated or whatever, she said that Ian could have told her anything. This is a quote, that the earth was flat, that the moon was made of green cheese, that the sun rose in the west, and I would have believed him.
Hmm.
Like that's a and I guess type of person. Like apparently Ian was really really charming. Like other people would also say this about him. Like he had that psychopathic thing where he would just grip your attention and make you want to like just follow him wherever he went. So one thing I wrote here was like, again, nobody would ever have convinced me that I've never liked anybody enough. I mean, I don't know, maybe I've never liked anybody enough. That's what it is. I've never met anybody that I liked enough who asked me to kill somebody that I would. Maybe I will one day, but I haven't yet.
Yeah, I don't know if I would. I feel like
If Ian told, or if Juan told you to like kill your neighbor right now, would you do it?
no. I
Okay.
don't want to go to jail, and I have
Okay.
children to take care of.
If Juan said he was going to kill the neighbor, but you have to help bury the body, would you do it?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like then potentially, because I'd be
It's
scared.
the slippery slope.
I'd be scared, you
This is how
know.
it starts. This is exactly how it starts.
I
But
feel like I'd be very afraid.
yeah, but like objectivity still exists. Like whether like okay, I'm in love with this person, they're amazing, they're great, whatever. There's still objective truth, and objectively, it is wrong to do the things that these people end up doing. And like people later on are gonna be like, poor Myra, poor Myra. It's like no, not poor Myra. Like she still had objective reality to contend with.
Yeah. Was
So
he abusing her?
yeah, of course, yeah. I mean, this is
Well, I
like
mean, so that's the thing too.
1950s England. Like punching the woman in the face was just like normal discourse. Like that was not like. I mean, I would not say they had an abusive relationship,
Outside of
but
like whatever was normal then, which was bad.
yeah, today it would be an abusive relationship. Back then, it was like he just loves me that much. You know, one of
Right.
those
Well,
things.
that's part of it too, I feel like.
Right, right. So yeah, they actually had like part of the relation was also like just like they started veering into like stuff that me and you like to talk about, which is like a lot of true crime gore stuff. Like I actually think they would have been fans of our show if they were still alive because they sort like they would go to like the library and just constantly check out books. And they, oh man, I didn't write it down. What's that? What's that? The Marquis de Sade book,
I don't know. I'm gonna look it up.
120 Days of Sod, I think it's called. It's a crazy intense. They made a movie about it. It is a crazy intense, like torture porn book.
120 Days of Sodom. Yep.
There it is. Yeah, and it's a movie too. It's super graphic. Like I wouldn't really recommend anybody watching it. It's very torture and like sexual. It's gross. But like that's the kind of things that are into. They would constantly check out books on stuff like that. or other true crime books that they would constantly be digesting and involved in. So that's why I thought, like, hey, maybe they would be our fans. I don't know.
Yeah, and all that again is fine as long as you don't actually murder people.
I know that's the part of it where it gets tough. Is like it's like you wonder because like me and you consume this kind of media, and I mean we're totally innocent. Like
Yeah.
it's not those things that make it bad. It's the events that happen afterwards that make it
Hmm.
like bad. And on those events, so I'm gonna read out what these guys did, and it's gonna be a little bit numb because it happens so much. It's like who gives a shit? Like, dude, murdered this kid, killed that kid, raped that. It's like it happened so much that it's almost like just it's meaningless. So sorry if it comes across that way. Obviously, people's lives mattered, but whatever. Like it happened forever ago, and they just did this a lot. So in 1963, this would be 2 years after they started dating. Dude, Ian got obsessed with Leopold and Loeb. Remember that case?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for those that don't know, this was about like basically two American dandies who thought that they were smart enough to commit the perfect crime, and they were obviously caught and arrested
Yeah, they were not. They were caught very quickly.
very quickly. Ian and Myra at this time moved into Myra's grandmother's house, which is awesome. That's a really cool thing to do when you're a man in your mid-20s to live with your girlfriend's grandmother. And Ian, at this point, he literally learned nothing from his obsession with the Leopold and Loeb case. So the entire premise of it was like, if you are of a certain level of intelligence, you can outsmart cops, you can outsmart everybody else, and that wasn't true in the
Right,
Leopold and Loeb
they
case.
very much did not do that.
Yeah, they did the opposite. They got caught and sentenced to death immediately. Ian thought that he could do better than them, so he literally learned nothing. He was like, I hear you, I see you, I can do better than this. He wanted to
How much
commit the
crime is
perfect
that?
murder.
Yeah.
Huh?
How much crime is that? People being like, "Oh yeah, that guy got caught, but I totally wouldn't get caught."
Yeah, it's probably yeah. I mean, it's a competition thing at that point. It's like a
Hmm.
sport at that point. So he decided he's going to commit this perfect crime, and he starts kind of figuring out like how Myra can get involved in this. Like again, like I don't know how she seems so bought into anything he said. It just felt like it was a natural progression. They would end up in this position. In this case, Myra was kind of central to what ends up happening, which is why I don't find her as like this victimless or blameless person. She
Yeah.
was a key component of this. So Ian tells Myra that he has a plan. They're going to rent a van, and Myra's going to drive around town. Ian's going to follow her in a motorcycle, and when he sees someone that he wants to abduct, he's going to flash the lights at her, and she could pull over and ask the victim if they want to take a ride. So
It's a weird ask.
yeah, it's again, I don't know where you find these people. So in July of 1963, they put this in action, and they end up kidnapping a 16-year-old classmate of Myra's sister, a girl named Pauline Reed. This is the very first one. So Myra pulls over, offers her a ride, and then she says yes, gets in the vehicle because she recognized her. She knew her.
Right, why wouldn't she?
Yeah. And Myra says, hey, I got to take a detour. I want help finding this glove, like some luxury, beautiful glove I have. I lost it, and I need help finding it. And the girl's like, okay, fine, I'll help. And so they take her to Ian and Myra's home. Ian then somehow convinces Pauline to go into the moors and look for this luxury, beautiful glove they have. And he ends up coming back alone. That's Myra's story. Brady or Ian's going to say something a little bit different, but that's the story that we're going to run with for now. We know for a fact, ultimately, based on confessions, that when he took her back there, he raped her and then stabbed her badly enough to almost decapitate her. Like he pulled an OJ. Like it was one of those.
Oh my
things.
God.
And Ian would claim that Myra was actually there the entire time. She took part in the sexual assault. She took part in the stabbing. And that's not the story that Myra tells. And I don't know who to believe. They're both scumbags. So
Yeah.
who's to say, right? Again, this is just going to keep rolling on. 5 months later, they offer a ride to a 12-year-old named John Telbride. They again say they have to go searching for something. And this time, they say they got to go directly to the moor instead of the house. And once they get there, Ian takes John out of the car. again, sexually assaults him and slits his throat. It's just like it's so sterilized the way I'm phrasing it, but it just happens over and over. Like, how many different ways can you say raped and like? It's just the same thing over and over
How
again.
big how big is the moor?
You know, Taylor, I was going to ask you if you knew what a Moor is.
I do know what a moor is. Do you know what a moor is?
I googled it, so I know what a Moor is. Why don't
Yes,
you
I
tell us what a Moor is?
it is like a big expanse of rolling green hills.
Yeah, that's yeah, you nailed
It's like
it.
Scottish land, like you'd imagine. I think of moors, I think of in Wuthering Heights, there's a lot of moors. Heathcliff always runs across the moor looking for her. And then also, I bet it's very foggy because my sister studied abroad in Brighton, and my brother and I went to visit her. And every morning we would go on a fog walk because it was so foggy. Him and I would go out to like just like the field that like they would like play soccer in or whatever, but we would be 3 feet apart and couldn't see each other.
It's crazy.
So we would like yell like fog walk and like run, and it was really fun. But I don't know. I imagine it was foggy too.
Yeah, yeah, of course. It's England, right?
Yeah.
It's so the legal definition for a moor is a tract of open, uncultivated upland. So it's like to me, I was just like, it's kind of like a wetter version of Joshua Tree. It's kind of what it feels
Yeah,
like.
yeah,
So that's
yeah, yeah.
basically what it is.
And people get murdered in Joshua Tree and disappear in there all the time. So that actually gives me
It's
context.
just you and Juan just taking out your neighbors left and right.
I mean, several hikers a year disappear. They probably just get lost and
They
die.
get lost. Yeah,
Terrible.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. They for sure get lost.
yeah.
So okay, so we're at John Kilbride. So 7 months after he's been killed and disposed of in the moors, Myra comes across a 12-year-old named Keith Bennett. She asks him to help load stuff into her vehicle, very Ted Bundy-esque, and then offers to take him home after, which she does, or she says she's going to do. They end up getting in the car. And this is the part of it where, like, I'm like, dude, she's not just some poor put-upon woman. Like, I'm not, maybe I'm sexist towards myself, but, like, if a man asks me for help, I'm not even going to slow down my walk to offer to help some random strange man. But if a girl asks me for help, it's like, oh, okay, like, sure, like, there's a trust there you don't
Yes.
have with a strange man.
I think that's true. I think that's definitely true. That like a woman I think that's why like Ian and other people have had women partners in crime like this because it's easier to get a kid in a van if a woman asks them. I think that's definitely
Yeah.
true. I also think that Ted Bundy would have 100% murdered me because I would have definitely helped him if he
He's
needed
not
help.
that good looking. Like,
I
everybody's
don't even care.
insane.
I would have helped him. He would have been like, "Hey, can you help me have this thing?" I'd be like, "Oh, sure, no problem." Like it wouldn't have crossed my mind. I'd probably still help him today. And then I'd be dead and I'd be like, "Fuck, I knew this was gonna happen, but I did it anyway."
That's why you don't help anybody. Like, I know that sounds really mean, but it's like, dude, like, everybody's out to get you. It's
It's
not,
not the
it's,
answer.
it's not the thoughts of a broken man.
Oh
Um,
God.
so going back to Keith, so Myra ends up taking Keith to her home, her and Ian's home, and Ian asks him to go help find
Which is the
this
grandma's home.
the grandma's home, who's not
Got
home
it.
apparently. And again, Ian asks her to go, or asks him to go help him find this beautiful glove he lost in the moor. There,
Weird.
he again sexually assaults Keith and strangles him to death. Next was Leslie Ann Downing. This would have been 7 months after Keith. So like, they actually have like kind of like a pretty protracted, cool off period. It's
Are people in
all five
town
to
like
7 months.
something's happening?
So later, everything gets pinned on these guys because like this was not the only. These were not the only kids going missing. Like there was like a
Oh,
lot of kids going missing. They were probably all just dying, sweeping chimneys, and just like their bodies were never found.
yeah.
But like a lot of kids were going missing, and I'll discuss this later on because police are like, wait a minute, we got these people who just keep killing children, and we just got arrested them. There's like another 30 missing kids. Maybe they killed all these. We don't know, but they
Yeah.
didn't really draw that distinction themselves until they were caught. So we're 7 months after Keith. Ian and Myra were shopping, and they noticed a girl, a 10-year-old Leslie Ann Downing. They dropped their bags in front of her and asked her to help. She's like, sure, I'll help because she's 10, right?
Yeah, I know.
And they're like, okay, thanks for helping. Can you help get this in our car? She's like, okay. And they're like, can you help get us in our house? And like, okay. And so she's like it's so fucked up, dude. Like using the trust, the inherent trust that a child puts in people against them, like it's so whatever.
And we've had this
Um,
before. Like that's what you tell kids. You tell kids like a grown up does not need your help.
Yeah.
Like if a grown up is asking for help, like you say no, like be polite, like whatever, but like don't help them. Like a grown up doesn't need your help. They can find another grown up. They can call someone. Like that's a big thing. But
TaskRabbit. They have TaskRabbit. Grown-ups have TaskRabbits.
yeah,
So
grown ups don't need a 10-year-old to help them move something.
so they take Leslie to their house, and while they're at the house, they do the normal thing. Ian rapes and strangles Leslie. And then they take her body out to the morgue to get buried. There's a lot more to this. It's just like, why even bother going to the details? Like they
Wait,
took,
do they bury them or do they just leave them?
no, they buried him.
Okay,
There's a lot more detail, but it's, again, like I just
just
mentally I don't want to go
gratuitous.
into
Don't
it.
do
It's
it.
like
Yeah.
yes, they took pictures of her. Yes, she
Mm,
screamed, and they like
poor
all
baby.
the gross stuff you would imagine happened. But it's like, dude, it happened like fucking 20 times. Like, I'm not going to keep talking about every single one of them. So just use
Yeah.
your imagination.
Yep.
So 2 months later came Edward Evans. Ian asked Myra to take him to a railway station to look for a victim, and Ian ended up finding Edward, who is 17 years old. So he's a bigger human
Yeah.
than these 10-year-olds and 12-year-olds are taking advantage of.
He's out of the chimney sweep business because he's
Out of the
17.
chimney sweep. Yep,
Yeah.
broad shoulders. So Ian apparently told Edward that he was like, this was a hookup. Like Ian was like, I'm gay, you're gay. This woman with me is my sister. We live together. She's gonna take us home. That was his conversation with Edward. So Edward goes with them. I did not bring this up earlier, but Myra's sister, I brought up Myra's sister before. Her name's Maureen. Maureen was married to a guy named David Smith, okay? And David Smith, Maureen, and Myra and Ian lived really close to each other. For some reason, David was also obsessed with Ian and also thought he was the coolest guy in the world and also thought like all these great things about him. Again, like this guy had like weird influence over people around him.
Yeah, that's weird.
And Ian thought that he had a kindred spirit in David, which he did not. He did not have a kindred spirit, but he thought he did. And so this night that they bring Edward home, Ian tells Myra to go over to Maureen and David's house and to bring David over and to like tell him what to do. So she does this. She goes to David and says, come over. David comes over, but it's like staying outside of the house until I give you a signal, then come knock on the door. I no idea why. I literally have no idea why this plan played out the way it did. It sounded incredibly overcomplicated and stupid. So at some point, they flicker the lights and David goes and knocks on the door. And then Ian opens the door and pretends like he doesn't really know him and says, oh, so you're here to collect your wine. Again, no idea why this plan. This sounds like such a stoner plan. Just overcomplicated for no reason. David plays along, and then Ian walks him into the kitchen and says, let me go fetch your wine, and leaves David in the kitchen. Then David describes hearing some insane screaming just over and over again. Like he said it was like a woman shrieking, and Myra rushes into the kitchen and says, David, go help him out. They really overestimated David's interest in what their lifestyle was. David goes in and sees that Ian is on top of Edward. He's holding a hatchet, just bludgeoning the shit out of Ian's face with this hatchet.
Oh my God.
And then, obviously, after being blown in the head enough, he's like sufficiently subdued. So Ian rolls him over and strangles him to death with an electrical cord while David is standing there.
They didn't kill him?
Yeah. Well, they didn't kill David. No, they killed Edward.
No, but I mean, like,
17-year-old.
hitting him in the head with an axe didn't kill him?
No. Apparently, he had to strangle him. Yeah, your skull's pretty hard. Yeah. Your skull can take a lot of damage. Trust me. So after all of this, David is like, this was awesome, man. I'm so glad you invited me over. I'm totally coming back later and helping you dig up a fucking grave to move this kid's body into. David's like, awesome, loved it. This is great. I'm gonna go home and I'll come back tomorrow.
Yeah, that's like, I don't know, yeah, that's weird. Like, yes, it might be like a smidge surreal, but like, that's weird.
A little bit weird. What's not weird is what happened after, which is David going home, immediately telling Maureen what he just witnessed, vomiting, like just randomly vomiting as he describes the events.
Exactly.
Again, I read this like, why did Ian think David would be this like chill dude and have like a great time doing this? It did not play out that way. So David, the next morning, he waited until the morning. It was like 6:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, or 6:30, 5 o'clock, or so much, like whatever. He ended up calling the police and told them, hey, I have a story to tell y'all. The police show up at their house and pick him up and take him to the police station where he basically confesses about everything, what he just witnessed.
Good.
Yeah,
Finally.
yeah, exactly. So the police would go to Ian and Myra's house and say they need to look around
Oh,
because
wait, I'm
they,
sorry. Stop.
yeah,
Stop. I just got a news update from the New York Times. Ted Kaczynski just died
no,
at 81.
no way.
Breaking news. Beep, 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 beep. Whoa. He had
I'll
his
have my
cake and ate it
revenge.
too.
No,
All right.
that's
Whoa.
sad actually.
I know. Poor guy, honestly.
He just wanted his spoiled milk.
He was
Which
given so much shit.
did you ever watch My Pretty Face is Going to Hell, the Unabomber episode?
No,
Oh my God,
I should.
they roasted Ted Kaczynski. It was so funny because it's Henry, right? It's Henry Zabrowski, and it
Yeah.
was oh so good. So anyways, it's on Hulu. You should check it out. Going back, so the police show up at the house and say they heard that a gun went off last night, and they're just investigating to see what was going on. They look around, and Myra lets them into the house. Eventually, they see that there's a door locked to the guest bedroom, and the police are like, "Where's the key to this? We need to go inside this room." That's where Edward's body was. Myra's like, the key to the room is at my work. Like, cool, we'll take you to your work. Ian looks over and was like, just give him the key. Like, it's over. Like, just give him the key. So she gives the key. The police find the body. So obviously, Ian is arrested immediately. Myra's not arrested immediately. It took 4 days before police finally arrested her as an accessory to murder until they actually knew how involved she really was. Once she was arrested, police started finding these little artifacts that like serial killers tend to keep. So they found, for example, like a notebook with John Kilbride's name and information on there. They found naked pictures that they had taken with Leslie. They found audio recording of Leslie's torture,
Ugh.
and again, like police knew that these were missing kids. So when they see the names, it's like, what? like there's a pattern forming, right? Because at
Yeah,
this
yeah,
time,
yeah.
nobody knows what a serial killer is. Like this is like the
Right.
1960s. Like nobody knows. That's the concept doesn't even exist yet. So police start talking to neighbors and asking about Ian and Myra and what they like to do. One of their neighbors mentioned that they would frequently go to this one specific site in the moors, and police started looking there. And there, they found an arm protruding from the moors, from the dirt, and that would have been Leslie Downey's arm, the 10-year-old.
Ugh.
So they keep digging, they keep uncovering more bodies. One thing they did that I kind of found interesting was that they would oftentimes take pictures when they were in the moors, and they had a dog called Puppet. And this dog was like a puppy at certain points and grew up. Police had a hard time knowing like what timelines this all happened. And like they knew that okay, this kid went missing at this time. There's a picture of them in the moors at this time. Like what did they overlap? They didn't
Hmm.
know. So they had a vet basically apply general anesthetics to this dog to like do some dating based on its teeth or gum work or whatever to get a sense of like how old the dog was to backdate when these
Oh,
pictures were
interesting.
taken. Yeah.
Hmm.
Ultimately, the anesthetic they used ended up killing the dog. They overdid it, but whatever. That's kind of what one of the things they ended up doing.
Oh my
Poor dog,
gosh.
the last victim. So they uncovered a couple of these bodies. No help from Ian or Myra at all. Both of them pled not guilty, and Ian was ultimately found guilty of 3 of the murders, and Myra was found guilty of 2 of the murders. So like they haven't found all the bodies yet. They just like found what they found, and they started prosecuting them.
Hmm.
So they're obviously sentenced to life in prison. And during this time, police would start looking into other murders of children that happen, or not missing children, like not murders, but missing children that happen in and around Manchester. We don't know how many people these guys killed. Like they could
Oh
have
my
killed
God.
so many more because they never confirmed other murders. They would just kind of say like, "Oh God, maybe we did that one. I don't know."
Right.
They weren't
They just
sure.
killed
There
so
was
many
so many.
people.
Yeah.
Ew.
And she would tell them that like, hey, if you take me on the moors, I could probably find like I could probably guess like where a couple more bodies are, and they would ultimately do this. So they ended up taking taking Myra out into the moors, and they just it was crazy, like because they were so sure everybody was going to kill her. They had like 200 cops with them. They had like helicopter protection. They had like aircraft, like anti-aircraft stuff with. It was crazy how
Right.
much. She ended up not finding anything, any of the bodies, and so people were like, "This is a waste of time. You shouldn't have done this." So,
Just want to go for a
uh,
walk.
yeah, she probably just wanted to go for a walk. It's kind of like Henry. What is his name? Henry Lee
Lucas.
Lucas. Yeah, it's one of
Yeah,
those.
I just wanted to be out and like, get some free cigarettes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Myra ultimately would confess to the murder of Pauline Reed. That was the first girl, a 16-year-old. Um, and she wasn't convicted of that one originally. So after she's been convicted, she's in life in jail. She finally confesses to that. Police told Ian that Myra confessed this. He couldn't believe her. And he said, fine, I'll confess to everything I've done if you give me the opportunity to kill myself after. So he was on the
What?
suicide train. Yeah.
I'm not gonna do that.
Of course, that was a no-go. That wasn't going to happen. You know what's crazy? I just realized this. Ian almost outlived Myra by 20 years.
Wow.
The guy who wanted to off himself more than anybody else in human history was almost 80 years old when he finally died naturally of natural causes. It's
Wow.
crazy. So again, like this is the point where Myra starts getting all this sympathy from people, and they think that like she was forced to do this with Ian. Ian did not get any sympathy at all, obviously. He was a complete monster and was basically like legally diagnosed as a psychopath. That meant that he was moved from prison to a psychiatric hospital. So they really don't do like the psych stuff that we do here in the US over there apparently, because once he's deemed insane and a psychopath, he is not legally allowed to refuse medical treatment for his mental health
Wow.
issues. That's important because he keeps trying to kill himself because he starts to try and starve himself to death, but legally he can't because food is part of like his mental health treatment, and so
Wow.
they force feed him. So he starts petitioning the government to deem him sane to go to prison so he can find other ways to kill himself, including starving himself to death. He's
Oh my
not successful,
God.
obviously, in this. He ended up dying, and actually pretty recently. It was 2017. He was 79 years old. Yeah,
Wow.
longest serving prisoner in England's history. Crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. Again, I'm going to be annoyed at Myra and her time in jail. So she would file endless appeals. And again, with the sympathy people put on her, so they lobbied to get her life sentence reduced to 25 years, which they did. Then later on, politicians were like, nah, that's not long enough, do 30 years. So they increased it to 30 years. She lobbied herself to get her prison classification reduced so that she could pursue a relationship with the warden of the prison, which she did. So she got her classification from an A prisoner, which is like the highest security, to like a B prisoner, which is like less, so that she could go on walks with the prison warden and like have a sexual relationship with her, basically. And the one thing I would say is like the only people that struck me as completely sane in this case were actually the people who they victimized, the parents of the people they victimized. So Myra's
Hmm.
sister Maureen ultimately would die before Myra ended up dying, and the parents of John Kilbride attended Maureen's funeral, just in case Myra intended it, so that they could strangle her and try to kill her. And what's
I
funny
mean,
is somebody else was there that looked kind of like Myra, and the dad attacked and like started battering this poor woman who had
oh
nothing to do with
no.
anything. And Pineapple just pulled her off her. But anyways,
Yeah, I get that
so
though.
that's basically the story. She ended up dying
Wow.
in 2005, I think it was. I never write the exact date down, but she was 60 years old. So
That's so
again,
crazy that they like, lived to like see the internet and like 9/11,
dude, it's crazy. It's
you
wild.
know?
Yeah.
See all those gays start 9/11.
Fucking Pat Robertson. So, anyways, again, like, there's a lot of details to the story that's just like, God, it's just so gross. Like,
It's so gross.
it's like, why? It's not even fun to talk about. You
Yeah.
know, like at least Jeffrey Dahmer stuff, like it's fun to talk about some of that stuff. But with this, it's just like a bunch of 10-year-olds, man. Like it's an
Yeah.
awful thing.
And like just and kind of like taking advantage of the time. I guess that like no one really was paying attention, or like kids could just disappear or die in a chimney and you would never fucking know.
It's all about the chimney.
Ugh. That's terrible.
So that's my story, Taylor.
Ugh, gross. Thank you for sharing.
As a future corpse, and who is drinking curdled milk, what
Ew.
are you going to be discussing?
Oh my God, that's so gross. I know I said it, but I still think it's gross. Okay.